Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time you're watching this. But wherever you are, I hope you are okay. And so today we're going to discuss about the data of macroeconomics. Just to give you a brief background, last time we have discussed about the science of macroeconomics. We have this is the second topic to the introduction of macroeconomics. So the next topic that we will have is about national income. So you need to learn the different basics before we go there. Okay. So the full text of this chapter will be found in Macroeconomics by Gregory Mankiw, and I would like to thank also Mr. Michael Barsabal for these slides. Okay. So for the chapter overview, this is the guide question. What do the following macroeconomic variables represent and how are they measured? First is gross domestic product. Second is consumer price index, which is related to your inflation and your unemployment rate. Okay. This is the outline of our discussion. First is GDP. Second is income, expenditure, and circular flow, flows versus stocks, and rules in computing GDP. So by the way, this is a three-part discussion. So ayan, I hope you learn a lot. So first, we discuss what is GDP. So a key measure of the state of the economy is called your gross domestic product or GDP. So it's the market value of the final goods and services produced within an economy over a certain period. So basically, GDP is a measure of wealth. So I checked definition of PSA for gross domestic product, and it is the value of all goods and services produced domestically. Merong ano yan, merong emphasis. So later on, madi-differentiate natin yung GDP and GNP. So GDP class is the value of all goods and services produced domestically. It's the sum of the gross value added of all resident institutional units engaged in production, plus any taxes and minus any subsidies on products not included in the values of their outputs. So it is the aggregate of the gross value added or income originating from the three sectors of the economy. So yung three sectors na minameasure natin sa GDP in the Philippines is agriculture, industry, and services. Okay. So GDP is both total expenditure on domestically produced final goods and services or ayan, total income earned by domestically located productive resources. So expenditure equals income because every dollar spent by a buyer becomes income to the seller. So this is a um this is a key to our discussion of the basic circular flow model of the economy. So expenditure is income. Okay, so in GDP class, we need to emphasize that we only count the value of final goods and not the intermediate goods. So bakit nga ba natin hindi kinakount yung intermediate goods? Okay, the main reason is to prevent double counting. So for example, we have a car. So ang intermediate goods natin is, for example, gulong, or like your windshield or wiper or something like that. So pag kinount natin yung car, tapos kinount pa natin yung gulong, parang magiging overestimated siya kasi nagkaroon ng double counting. So we only include the final goods. Okay. So to further explain that, we have the differences here of the final goods and intermediate goods. So ang final goods are those goods that do not require further processing and are ready to use for consumption or investment. So final goods, ito yung mga binibili natin for final consumption. So resale is not part of your final goods. Okay, so intermediate goods are goods used to produce a final good or finished goods, so such as your raw materials, parts, capital items, etc. for the purpose of selling it to the consumer. So, hindi pa siya yung buo. Like, for example, na yung gulong, binebenta mo siya para makagawa ng car, okay? Para makagawa ng car, and yung car naman yung in-add natin sa ating GDP. So all others are the differences. You can read on that as well if you're interested. Okay, so for income, expenditure, and circular flow, we have here the basic circular flow of income model. So, kaya ako, this is a basic one. So, it's the circular flow model of the economy, but this one is the circular flow of income, since sabi nga natin models are used to simplify things. So, for this model, um, we are assuming that the economy produces one single good, which is bread, and from a single input labor. Okay. So, for example, dito sa economy na to, yun nga, bread lang talaga yung binibenta. So, paano nagkakaroon, bakit siya naging circular flow model of the economy? And sabi nga natin, expenditure is equal to income. So, there are two sectors here, yung household natin and yung firms. Okay. Remember in your basic economics that households holds the um, main resources, okay, such as your land, labor, four factors of production in short. Your land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial ability. So for this matter, yung household natin for this model, yung household natin, okay, is bumibili siya ng bread sa ating firms. Okay, so one household bought bread from a firm. So, ang mangyayari dyan is yung household, magbibigay siya ng pera sa firms, and that is an expenditure to the household. Okay, but yung expenditure ng household is an income to the firm. Okay, kinita niya yon. Okay, so dito muna tayo sa baba. Paano natin siya explain? Yung household is nagbigay siya ng pera to the firm. Okay, and in return, yung firm ay nagbigay ng good which is your bread. Okay, so yan. Paano naman ang mangyayari dito sa kabilang side, or anong mangyayari dito sa kabilang side? Yung kinita ng firm, yung income niya, ay hindi lang din nag-stay sa economy just because yung firm ay gumagastos naman para magbayad ng wages sa mga households natin. Okay? Kaya nga yung firms, yung income niya bumabalik lang din sa household. Assuming that yung household natin sila ang nagpo-provide ng labor. Since tayo naman talaga, di ba, from yung labor na factors of production natin, the members of the household gets to work to the firm. So, ibig sabihin nun, yung para mabalik ng household yung pera na ginagastos niya sa firm, okay, nagbibigay siya, ay nakakakuha siya ng income when he or she work for the firm. Okay, kaya nga sabi natin siya, kaya siya circular flow, kasi umiikot lang talaga yung pera sa economy ng ating, sa economy, for example. So, yung firms, dahil nag-hire siya from the household, kailangan niya magbayad ng income, or kailangan niyang magbayad ng wages or salary to the household. Okay. So, ang in short, the basic circular flow model describes the economic transactions that occur in the households and firms in the economy. Okay. So to discuss further, yung GDP measures the value of flow of money in the economy in three ways. First is total income. Second is total expenditure. And the third one is value added of all firms in the economy. So, yung sa value added of all firms, mayroon yung ways din paano nyo siya i-compute. Pero ang most common dito yung total income and total expenditure. So, from either viewpoint, it is clear why GDP is a gauge of economic performance. So GDP class is a measure of economic wealth. So ibig sabihin nun, mas mataas ang GDP, mas mayaman ang isang bansa in short. So GDP measures something people care about, their income. So simply an income with a large output of goods and services can better satisfy the demands of households, firms, and the government. Okay, so we need to learn also about the difference between a stock and a flow. Okay. Paano nga ba natin malalaman kung ang isang variable ay stock or flow? Is GDP a stock or flow? Okay, so ang stock loss is a quantity measured at a given point in time. Okay? Ang flow naman is a quantity measured per unit of time. To discuss further, ganito ang itsura or ito yung reference natin. Paano nyo malalaman kung stock siya or flow? Okay, the stock is the total or accumulated water in a tub. Okay? Yung flow is yung nadadagdag sa kanya or nadadagdag doon sa tub. So, yun lang lagi. Ako, nalilito din ako ng undergrad dito. Pero ito yung lagi kong naalala yung tub. Yung stocks is yung stock ng water sa tub. So, may nadadagdag which is yung flow. Okay. Pag nagkabutas yan, nagkakaroon ng leak or leakage. So, later on, ipapakita ko sa inyo yung diagram. So, sabi nga dito, GDP is a flow variable. So, ibig sabihin nun, GDP is parang quantity measured per unit of time. Okay, so na-measure natin siya ng every quarter or year on year, ganyan. So other examples related to concepts of stocks and flows. A person's wealth is a stock and his or her income and expenditure are flows. Diba? So ibig sabihin, yung total wealth mo is the stock. Pero every time you have salary from different flows of income, sabi nga nila, kaya nga parang sources of income, it's your flow. The number of unemployed people is a stock, kaya ang ayan, meron pa ako example later. The number of people losing their jobs is a flow. Okay. So, sabi ko nga, yung stock is yung accumulated, yung flow is yung pumapasok doon sa stock, but it doesn't mean na hindi siya nababawasan. Okay? So for example, ang ano natin dito yung stock of capital. So every time na mayroong new investment is a flow. Okay, pero pag capital kasi depreciates, right? So yung depreciation is an example of a leakage. Bumababa siya. So ang flow ay dumadagdag sa stocks, ang nagbabawas naman sa kanya ay ang depreciation or leakage na tinatawag natin. Okay. So, rules for computing GDP. Ayan, adding apples and oranges. There are many different goods and services and economy. GDP combines the value of these goods and services in a single measure. How? Okay. So, in national income accounting class, meron tayong ginagamit na prices. Kasi paano mo ma-add yung apples and oranges? 'Di ba? Parang magkaibang goods sila. Pero ang GDP, pinagsasama-sama niya yung income from different goods. So, ginagamit natin siya simply because there are prices. So, kumbaga parang weights na, yung prices is like your weights na ina-assign mo for that good. So, the market prices are used to compute the total value of different goods and services. So, for this instance, suppose the economy produces 20 pieces of pineapples and 300 ball pens. If each pineapple is worth 33 pesos, while each of the pen is worth 55 pesos, how much is the GDP? Sige nga, i-complete nyo nga, class. Yan, I'll give you 5 seconds or you can just pause this para at least for the next slide is alam ninyo kung ano ang sagot. So, to simply compute this, you just multiply the quantity and yung price. So, 20 pieces times 33 ay yung 300 ballpens natin times 55. Mahal ng ballpen, siguro GTEC yun. Anyway, so this is the solution. So if you're not yet done, you can pause it para at least ma-verify natin kung tama ang sagot ninyo. Okay. So again, 20 times 33 is 660. 300 times 55 is 16,500. So the GDP is 17,160. So that parang ano lang siya, simplification of reality that we can add the value of each good kahit magkakaiba sila kasi meron silang prices. Okay? So, paano naman ang treatment natin sa used goods? So, used goods, ibig sabihin yung mga ukay-ukay, for example, kasama ba sila sa GDP? So, GDP only measures the goods and services that are currently produced. Second-hand products are not considered part of GDP. Kasi imagine mo, parang na-compute na yung value ng clothes na yun in beforehand, tapos binenta siya. I-abolish yun sa GDP, dapat hindi na, to prevent double counting. Okay, ano naman ang treatment natin sa inventory? So, is it possible? It's possible not all goods and services produced by the firm are sold immediately. These items are kept as inventories which will be sold later. So, in terms of inventories, meron tayong dalawang instances dito. Okay, so for this example, isipin natin yung bread. Okay, yung bread is put into inventory. So for example, as a frozen dough, ayan, to be sold later. So in this case, the national income accounts treat the transaction differently. Medyo komplikado lang to kasi pwedeng ma-add, pwedeng hindi. So the owners of the firm are assumed to have purchased the bread for the firm's inventory. Okay, yung inventory class is yung mga naka-stocks lang na hindi pa nabebenta or yung mga naka-stocks kasi yung mga nakalagay sa cabinet, ganyan, for example, or naka-ref. Ayan. And the firm's profit is not reduced by the additional wages it has paid. Okay? Because the higher wages paid to the firm's workers raise total income and the greater spending by the firm's owners on inventory raises total expenditure. Thus, the economy's GDP rises. Okay? So, ibig sabihin nun, um, pag, um, pag yung bread natin, okay, is parang inassume natin na binili natin siya out of the firm's inventory. Okay? So, yung profit natin is hindi siya nababawasan dahil sa additional wages na it has to be paid. Okay? But, dahil nagbayad tayo ng wages, okay, uh, dahil nagbayad tayo ng higher wages and it raises the firm's total income, the greater the spending of the firm's owner's inventory raises total expenditure. Okay, kasi pwedeng ibenta mo yun parang um, ibenta mo rin yun, tapos nagkaroon ka rin ng additional income. Okay, what happens naman later when the firm sells the bread out of inventory? So case is much like the sale of a used good. They're spending by bread consumers, but there is inventory disinvestment by the firm. Okay? Okay, paano naman ulitin natin, paano naman kapag yung firm natin is binenta naman yung inventory? Okay, so para siyang used good kasi parang na-count mo na yung inventory as part of your assets or something. So ang nangyari dito is binili ng consumers yung inventory mo na binili mo, for example, yung frozen dough. Okay, but ang nangyari is nagkakaroon ng inventory disinvestment by the firm. So, in this investment is it means to sell of certain assets such as yun nga yung inventory. Okay. So yung negative spending by the firm offsets the positive spending by the consumer. So the it does not affect the GDP. So binili niya sa binili niya sa yung bread, okay, pero nagkaroon ng disinvestment kasi nga nabawasan yung inventory mo. Okay. So ibig sabihin, it doesn't affect GDP, hindi nadagdagan or nabawasan. So the general rule class para hindi tayo malito dito is when a firm increases its inventory of goods, this investment in inventory is counted as expenditure by the firm owners. Okay? Dahil nagdagdag na siya ng inventory for future use, nag-spend siya. So, part siya ng GDP. Production for inventory increases GDP just as much as production for final sale. Okay. However, kapag naman yung in-store mo na inventory is nabenta mo, okay, it's a combination of positive spending as in yung purchase and negative spending or such as your inventory disinvestment. So it does not influence GDP. This treatment of inventories ensures that GDP reflects the economy's current production of goods and services. Okay, nabanggit na natin to kanina pero let us just emphasize it. Per intermediate goods class ay hindi kasama sa GDP. So, paano natin siya iti-treat? In stages. So, for this instance, GDP includes the value of final goods and services. Okay. So, pag meron tayong raw material na 70 pesos, yung intermediate good natin is 100 pesos, yung final milk tea natin is 150 pesos. Ano kaya ang GDP dyan? Okay. The correct answer is actually here. Ayan. So we compute the value of all final goods and services as the sum of value added at each stage of production. So yung raw material natin is 70 pesos. Okay, naging intermediate good siya. Ibig sabihin may nadagdag na 30 pesos value to it. Okay. Tapos, nung naging final good siya or yung milk tea natin, nadagdagan siya ng additional 50 pesos yung value niya from 100 to 150. So, ibig sabihin, dito sa stage na to, nadagdagan ng 30, dito sa stage na to, nadagdagan ng 50. So, ang ating total value added is 70 plus 30 plus 50. Hindi siya 70 plus 100 plus 150. Okay. Another treatment natin na tinitingnan dito is yung imputations. Some services are not sold in the marketplace, thus do not have market prices. If such products are included in the computation of the GDP, national accountants typically estimate imputated values to these services. So, ang ibig sabihin nito, may mga, yun nga, ang imputated value na sinasabi natin is like yung estimate. So for example nga, sa mga housing, for example, meron kang sariling house, hindi ka na mag-rent, pero hindi ka na mag-rent sa sarili mong bahay. But meron tayong imputated value para ma-measure natin kung ano yung value niya. Okay? So, although most goods and services are valued at their market prices when computing GDP, some are not sold in the marketplace and therefore do not have market prices. So if GDP is to include the value of these goods and services, we must use an estimate of their value. Yung estimate na yun is yung imputed value. Imputed ba sasabi ko? Imputed value. Ayan. So imputation is especially important for determining the value of housing. A person who rents a house is buying housing services and providing income for the landlord. The rent is part of the GDP, both as expenditure by the renter and as income for the landlord. Okay, so meron tayong rent, meron tayong income from the rent, meron tayong ini-spend as yung ating mga, tayo naman nag-rent. Okay, however nga, paano pag sarili mong bahay, di ba? So, nagkakaroon tayo ng imputed value. Since GDP includes the rent that the owners pay to themselves. However, yun nga, homeowners do not pay themselves this rent. Okay. So, at the same time is yung government services. Kasi, for example, police officers, firefighters, senators provide services to the public. Assigning a value to these services is difficult because they are not sold in a marketplace and therefore do not have a market price. So, ibig sabihin nun, ini-estimate natin siya para masama natin siya sa GDP. Okay, at the same time is yung unpaid household work. GDP does not include unpaid services of household members for their final consumption, such as, for example, yung cleaning, decorating, maintenance of housing, hindi na siya sinasama, di ba? So, wala naman na, kunyari, initusan ka na maglinis ng bahay, sasama pa ba natin yung sa GDP as part of the labor, etc.? Hindi na. Okay. Ayun, so that is the first part of our discussion. Okay, so I hope you understood the first part. And the next part, we will be tackling GDP, real versus nominal, chain-weighted measures of GDP, GDP levels versus growth, seasonal adjustment, components of GDP or alternative measures of GDP, etc., and beyond GDP. Okay, I'll see you in the next part.